Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Elisa Slazinska, and I work for the City of Chicago, Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. Welcome to the BACP Business Education Workshop Webinar Series. We have adapted our regular business education workshops at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. On behalf of our Commissioner, Rosa Escarino, I want to inform you that business licenses can be processed online where applicable by visiting chicagobusinessdirect.org. And any websites and email addresses that I mention will be posted in the chat, so you'll be able to reference them there as well. And if you are part of the Business Startup Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn about the program, please visit chicago.gov/business-workshops. To help guide your business and employees during Phase 4 of Chicago's reopening process, please visit chicago.gov/reopening. Also, BACP and the City of Chicago's Office of Emergency Management and Communications created Shy Biz Emergency Alerts. You can opt in to receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community. If you are interested, please visit chicago.gov/ShyBizAlerts. We encourage participants to ask questions by using the chat box and sending questions to all panelists. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. And today's webinar will be how to write a business plan, what you need to know. It will be presented by Donna Rockin, Managing Partner at Rockin Enterprises. Welcome, Donna.
Well, it's so good to be here. I'm delighted. And everybody needs a business plan, whether you're starting a new business or you have to reinvent your business because of the pandemic. Usually when we're live, I go around and say who's already in business, but we can't do that because we have so many people who jumped on this call. But be thinking of that you always need a business plan. Anytime you need to get money, anytime you need to find investors, to get leases, people want to know that you really know what you're doing. So a lot of times they ask for a business plan. And while my business has been around, Rockin Enterprises, since 1988, I did a pivot myself somewhere in the early 2000s, I think 2003, where I started to help small businesses get started. So I help early stage businesses. So when you have a business, you sort of do a pivot, sometimes because your clients ask you to provide a service. And it's similar to the one you're doing, slightly different, but you say, why not? I can do it and I can charge for it. So then all of a sudden, say you have a dry cleaners and somebody says, well, can you do my laundry? And you have a, wash machine and a dryer. So you say, sure, I can do a wash and fold. So a lot of times your clients sort of help you stumble into your next business idea if you need a pivot. So the other thing I want to mention is we are going to talk about writing a business plan and go over every detail. But if you need a beginner's cheat sheet, you might want to, and the handouts will be sent to you from BACP. There's something called the Business Model Canvas, and the book was called the Lean Startup, and it's by Eric Rice and the Strategizer. So it's like a mini cheat sheet where it helps you organize your thoughts. Who's your customers? What resources do you need? What technology do you need? So it's the Business Model Canvas is the name of the book. Do not buy the ebook. Get the real book or get it from the library, but don't buy the ebook, because I made that mistake. And the ebook, the first sentence is, "This book is better as a book." So it's the Business Model Canvas, and it's by Eric Rice, and the company is Strategizer. You can Google it, but the template for it will be sent out by Elise. I have a little frog, so I apologize. So a business plan is a written document that clearly defines the goals of a startup or an existing business and outlines specific methods for achieving these goals. It's a step-by-step, document that helps you say what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, when you're going to do it. And this is what's included: an executive summary, a business description, the product or service description. And here we use product or service interchangeably, doesn't make a difference. And marketing plan, operations and management plan, and a financial plan. But even though the executive summary comes first, it's usually a handful of paragraphs, 1 to 2 pages, 3 to 6 paragraphs. You write it at the end of when you've done all the work, because it will be much more concise, and you will know exactly what your business is doing, where it's located, how you're going to find customers. So you write it at the end, but it is the first part that shows up in the beginning. Now, the executive, so here is what I'm telling you. So it describes your target market, your overall goals. It also is 1 or 2 paragraphs. The uniqueness of your business. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of a USP, but we'll talk about it quite a bit in this lecture. A USP is a unique selling proposition. And what makes your business unique? Sometimes it's just that you're the only business in the neighborhood that provides that good or service. So if you're opening up a convenience store and there's none in the neighborhood, it doesn't matter that Chicago might have 2,000 convenience stores. There's none where you live. There's a new development. Maybe it's near Lincoln Yards and the neighborhood is coming back to life. Maybe you're at Lincoln Yards when it eventually gets built, and you want to open up a dry cleaner because people now have started to live in a place that had been industrial. If there's no dry cleaners, guess what? That's what makes you unique. Now, the business description, describe the business in detail and include the business name and location, the legal structure, and that means, are you a sole proprietor, which I don't recommend at all, of simple partnership, just as dangerous as a simple owner, and what makes your business unique? That's the unique selling proposition. And sometimes it's a disruptive technology. So you have to think about that when Uber came out, when zip cars came out, it disrupted what was normal for the business community, and why your business will succeed. And when you think also about uniqueness, like I said before, if you're the only dry cleaner, what pain point are you solving? It's a great question to answer. The pain point, the problem that I'm solving is this, that there's no dry cleaners, that there's no wash and fold services, that there's no convenience stores. So that's really, there's no insurance agencies in the neighborhood. When you describe the product service description, what is it? Summarize any key technology. What is your business based on? What features and benefits does your product or service have? And when we talk about features, I want you to think of the word FAB. It's feature, advantage, and benefit when you talk about it, because it's what's in it for me. If you have a dry cleaners in the neighborhood, I want to know that you're open early, or you stay open late, or you're open on the weekends, or you'll come and pick up the stuff if I leave it with, you know, the doorman in a doorman building. So it's the feature is, you know, convenient hours, and the advantage is we're always open to get your dirty clothes. And the benefit is we have a parking lot in front, you know, it's a strip mall. So it's easy to get to our place any time of day. So feature, advantage, benefit. How does your product or service solve your customer's needs uniquely? And there again, it is that unique selling proposition. Describe why a customer would buy from your business. What big problem are you solving? What pain point are you solving? And so that's really what you need to answer. Because somebody who's going to give you a loan or lease you a commercial space wants to know why your business will succeed. Why will customers beat a path to your doorway? And then you have to develop a marketing plan. And there is a competitive analysis that will be handed out, you know, because Elisa has all your email addresses. And the competitive analysis, you have to define your target market. And a target market is the group of people that is most likely to buy your product. And when clients come to me and they say, oh, everybody will buy my product, I want to throttle them because there is a distinct target audience that will be the heaviest users. So say you're coming out with a new lipstick. And yes, women probably 14 to, they're in the grave, God forbid, and even when they're in the casket, can use your product. But the heaviest users might be women 18 to 34. They're in the workplace, they're trying to snag a husband, you know, so they are your heaviest users. And then the next heaviest users might be 35 to 55. You know, they're still working, they still want to look good, but maybe they just don't wear as much lipstick. They're already married, they have kids, they don't have to be as glamorous. So think about the real target audience, who is going to be the heaviest users. And by the way, you have to really think about it carefully because sometimes the users are not the buyers. Think senior care. Usually, kids are deciding where their senior parents are going to live after they sell the family home. Think baby food, think diapers. Yes, infants use it, but mom is buying it or grandma is buying it. Think QVC. QVC appeals to mature retired women because they have a lot of time on their hands and the hosts are so engaging. So even though they buy the stuff for their granddaughters, their grandsons, the family, their daughters, it's who's watching the show, and that is senior women. So think of detail about your target market. Somebody posted a question, will this webinar be recorded? And it is, they told me, because they asked my permission. Include in your competitive analysis, and there's a great handout for it, direct competitors. So if I think of Coca-Cola, you might think of Pepsi, RC, different carbonated beverages, you know, root beer, Orange Crush, 7-Up, those are all direct competitors. But indirect or alternative competitors might be milk, juice, water, all those flavored bubbly waters, you know, bubbly and all the alternatives. So you have to think about what's the direct competitor and what's an indirect or alternative that solves the same problem. So if I'm thirsty, there's Gatorade, there's lots of things, those Sun Juice products, there's lots of things that will solve my thirst. And then you have to think about what is the positioning of your product. And the positioning of the product is good, better, best. So when you think of GM, they have the Cadillac, that's the top of the line. Then a little bit lower is the Buick. And then still lower is the Chevy. They all provide transportation, but you have your good, better, best. They're all quality cars. They're all made by GM, but one has leather seats, one has surround sound, the Cadillac. It has memory seats versus having, my husband swears that our next car will have memory seats because he's 6'3" and I'm about 5'7", so he constantly, if I don't push the seat back, he has to readjust it. So what is the positioning of the product? Define the product packaging. And sometimes you are the package. Think about how Target makes their employees wear red T-shirts, or Best Buy makes their employees wear blue T-shirts so you can identify them on the sales floor. But also think of real estate agents. Real estate agents, when they drive up and they're picking you up and they're going to take you out and show you homes, they are dressed to the nines. They have the best car that they can afford because they want to convince you as soon as you see them that they are successful and they are the ones that will find you your dream home. And they do that because they are the package. But sometimes the package is the package. And think about the milk chug. Dean's Milk, which is the Chicagoland company, revolutionized the milk industry by turning the little wax paper carton, and some of you are so young you may not remember the wax paper carton that milk came in, into a plastic bottle that fit the cup holders in a car. Because mom was buying the kids products that fit the cup holders when she shuttled them to ballet lessons and soccer practice and whatever else, and milk got left behind because it was square and it didn't fit that little round circle in the car. So packaging, think of Tide Pods. I mean, how lazy can you be that you don't want to pour a little bit of Tide in the cap? But now there's Tide Pods, there's dishwashing pods, there's pods for all sorts of things. So, packaging can be very important product differentiator, make it unique. Your unique selling proposition. And where will your business be located? Is the right location critical? And sometimes it's not critical at all. Sometimes you're home-based if you're a massage therapist because you take the table and you go to the client. Same way with makeup artists. If a big portion of your business is doing wedding parties and you go to the bride's home, it doesn't matter that you work out of your house. You're bringing all the brushes and the tools and the blow dryers and the curling irons. You're bringing that to the bride. So sometimes the right location is not critical. Now, sometimes it is, though. This is location, location, location. And this is in Aurora. And the horizontal street is North Aurora Road. And the vertical street is Eola. Very, very busy intersection in Aurora. And that little red dot on the screen is a Dunkin' Donuts. And it's one of the most successful Dunkin' Donuts when people were driving to work because it has a convenient drive-through and it's easy to get to, and it had great traffic patterns. So sometimes location, location, location really is important, while sometimes it's not for a home-based business. Especially if you're a home chef and you go into some other woman's home to cook for parties and, prepare meals, it doesn't matter where you live. But this little dot, I don't know if I usually when I give this presentation live, I say, who can guess what that is? That's in an industrial park somewhere else in Aurora, in the back of nowhere. And if you had a factory, this location would be fine. If you were an accountant and people only came to you once a year at tax year and most rest of the year you drove to your clients to close out their books and said this location would be fine. But this little red marker on this screen shot, that is a retail clothing store. It is in the back of an industrial, park. It had no street visibility, none whatsoever. It wasn't even on the right side of the industrial park. It died a quick death. So sometimes if you rely on foot traffic, you want to be in a street or a strip mall that has, say you are the dry cleaner, you want to be next to fast food restaurants, you want to be next to the post office, you want to be next to a garage or a gas station. You want to be where people walk by and see you, and it's easy to get in and it's easy to get out. So sometimes location is very important, and other times it doesn't matter at all. A good point, if you are a consultant and you do work out of your home and you always go to a client, a great place to meet new clients is at their offices, or pick a mutual spot, pick a hotel lobby when hotels were open, and say, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. Do you want to meet at the coffee shop at the Hilton at XYZ address? So that's a good trick. Now, how will you price your product or service? Good, better, best. Are you going to be the most expensive, on par with the competition, or higher? And how does your price compare to direct and indirect competitors? If I buy a Coke, it's pretty much the same price as a Pepsi 12-ounce can to 12-ounce can, or 16-ounce bottle to 16-ounce bottle. They're pretty much the same. Sometimes things are on sale, but they cycle through. 1 week Coke's on sale, 1 week Pepsi on sale, 1 week Dr. Pepper and the 7-Up and that line of products is on sale. Dr. Pepper also owns one of the root beer companies, so they'll be on sale. But more importantly, can you be profitable at your chosen price? So when you're good, better, best, I never recommend being the lowest priced competitor. Because if you have competitors on the same street or in the same strip mall or the strip mall down the street, somebody else can lower their price, and soon you're making such thin margins that you can't afford to stay in business. So you have to make sure, yes, sometimes you can make it up on volume and be one of the lower priced companies in the community, but you have to be careful that you are making money. And we get to the finances in a minute. That's the name of the game. These are not charities. If they're charities, you'd have a 501c3 status. And we'll talk more about the types of businesses too, and when we talk about partnerships a little bit later, but why I said that sole proprietor and a simple partnership are not a good way to go. How will you promote or advertise your product or service? And this is very important because small businesses don't have the luxury of national brands. Now, sometimes when you take out a franchise, they actually do give you funds to help you advertise. It's called a co-op fund. And I don't know if this is true for McDonald's, but let's use them as an example. So say you're an independent franchisee of McDonald's. A lot of times for every burger you sell, they'll give you 2 cents to, the national brand will give you 2 cents to help you promote your products in your location. Maybe it's 2 cents a Happy Meal or whatever. So those are called, and a lot of the national brands, if you have like a retail store, like a convenience store or a grocery store, when you advertise Tide products, they do give you money. They have special promotions for every bottle of Tide that goes out the door. So, but otherwise you're paying for it. And you can think, I don't know how many of you know WeatherTech. It's hard to live in Chicagoland and not know of WeatherTech. But they did all their advertising. They make those special floor mats for cars and cup holders for your phone. They did all their advertising on billboards. And I know for sure WBBM radio during drive time. Now, maybe they did other TV radio stations too during drive time. I happen to listen to WBBM on 105.9 FM. But that's where they advertised. That's when you were driving in snow and rain and weather is terrible in Chicago, and it was to protect your car. So they were very clever, and that's pretty cost efficient. Also, when they bought billboards, it's because you were stuck in traffic on the Kennedy or the Eisenhower or the Eden. So they had a very good targeted audience plan. And you have to reach your target audience. So what will you use? How will you reach your audience? And sometimes it's as simple as putting a sign in your window. Subway has those specialty sandwiches that are specially priced. Monday's so-and-so sandwich, Tuesday is this, Friday is tuna salad. So and sometimes signage is a great way to reach your target market, but otherwise, think about direct mail, local radio, local newspaper, val packs, and you can also buy, depending on if you're a business-to-business company, regional sections of national magazines. Another great thing, although it's more expensive now than it was initially, is Google AdWords. So Google AdWords, you say, I want to come up first in a Google search when people just Google dry cleaners near me. And then you pay a certain amount and you can turn off the faucet when you reach the dollar limit for the day. So say I pay 50 cents to be the first dry cleaner in 60611 when people Google dry cleaners in my neighborhood near me. And then once I reach $5, then I just fall naturally wherever I fall in the Google search. So that's what Google AdWords does. But another way that's cheaper is e-newsletters. So e-newsletters, people who come into your retail shop, you collect business cards or names or special offers, or you ask them to sign up when they search. You say you have a nursery, not for children, but for plants. Or even for children, and people are Googling you. You can say, join and receive our newsletter. You always have to have people opt in, though, because the e-newsletters are very sensitive. You can't just blast them out to strangers that you collect their email addresses. But also using Facebook. Lou Malnati's, who is a Chicago icon pizza company here, they are so successful on Facebook because they have these little silly contests where they give away a very small prize, a large family pizza, or free drinks for everybody at the table, or a $15 gift card. Very small prizes for silly contests, a pet dressed up for Halloween, or the smallest, kids dressed up for Halloween, the best contest, and then people vote. They have such a following on Facebook that now they do all their career searching by posting the jobs on Facebook, because they feel that people who follow them really get their message that they're a family-owned business, their values for quality and quality pizza. And so, those are things that are affordable that a small business can use. Then, more importantly, is answer the physical distribution question in your business plan. Where will customers expect to find your product or service? You have to answer that question because you have to be there. I always use this example. I don't know if you're ever more than 300 feet away from a Coke or Pepsi. They are in those machines. They're at the checkout counters at grocery stores and in also some of the big box stores. They're at L stations, and they are in hospital lobbies and school lobbies and study halls and maybe libraries. They're everywhere. They're inside the doors of a grocery store. Like you need a Coke going into shop and you need a Coke to get out when you're at the checkout counter. So you have to really be all those places customers expect you to be: convenience stores, grocery stores, big box stores, drug stores, depending on what your product is. How will you get your products distributed? Are you going to use wholesale and only sell to companies? Are you going to use sales reps? Sales reps are where and if you have a health or beauty aid or a consumer packaged good, you typically use sales reps who go in and call on the people who, they're buyers who buy your type of product. So if you have a health and beauty product, and people will call on the Walmarts and the Walgreens and the CVSs and the Targets, and they already have the relationship with the buyer who buys that category. So you have to think about and include how you will get your products distributed. Do you know who your suppliers will be? And wholesale, by the way, is when you sell directly to people who distribute your products. So you might sell directly to Bed Bath & Beyond or the Best Buy, and you sell to them and they distribute to all their locations. So that's when you sell directly to a wholesaler. Do you know who your suppliers will be? And mark my words, have backup suppliers. So if you make products, you make candy, you make a hair care product, you make a lip balm, have more than one supplier for your ingredients. Because mark my words, they will have a natural disaster that will keep them from delivering, and you will not have your raw ingredients. That happened when they had the tsunami and car companies couldn't get the parts for their foreign cars. It happens when Katrina, they can't get whatever products, ingredients were made in Louisiana. They happened here in, America with lesser storms. There was a tornado that touched down in Rogers Park this week. So if you had a supplier that was in, Appy Chapel used to be in Rogers Park. It isn't any longer, but it was a long time creator of those delicious taffy apples in Rogers Park. Well, Rogers Park lost a lot of electricity, and they also had a lot of trees down. Oh my God, it was so sad. So, have multiple suppliers for the same ingredients, because you can pit them off each other, or the same finished products. You can pit them off each other, get better pricing, and you will not be caught with your pants down if there is a natural disaster. And they'll have a fire, there'll be a strike. Trust me, it happens. Now, your resource requirements, you have to think about and include what your technology requirements are. What equipment do you need? What software? What internet connectivity? Think now when so many people are upgrading for touchless payment methods or accepting credit cards. Even, before, and it was probably not legal in a lot of states, they wouldn't take a credit card if it was less than $15. Now anybody will take a credit card because nobody has change, because nobody's gone to the bank or those coin store machines to count their change that they've been saving since the pandemic. So you really have to think about what you need in the way of connectivity, even if you're a small business, because now you have to take touchless pay. Think about your personnel requirements. Are you going to have part-time employees, full-time employees, contract employees? Contract employees are 1099ers, and we'll talk more about those in a minute. Background checks. Are you going to, need to check bonding? When is somebody really a contractor? We'll talk about that. But first, bonding is when you insure people that go into other people's homes. And you do it sometimes even when they work outside of the home, like if you have roofers or people who put up siding. So you really have to check, because they're around the house, they're around kids, they're around pets. So you might do background checks and bonding for lots of businesses. Now, a contract employee is when they're a 1099, and there is a 1099 test. You can Google it from the IRS. But basically what it comes down to, and by the way, Uber just got slammed in California because they said their drivers are not contractors. They are employees. Usually the IRS asks you to do who has behavioral control. Like, think of an accountant. When you hire an accountant, you sort of mutually agree when he can come and check your books, but he doesn't, those the only days that he sits on your premises. Sometimes you take the books to him. He has his own equipment, his own software. Sometimes he tells you what software to use so he can pull your stuff out of the sky. But, think about who has control of when he shows up, when he works, how often he works. Also, the financial. Think about how you pay him. Does he set his pricing or do you set your pricing? If you set your pricing, how much you're going to pay, he is your employee. She is your employee. If they tell you, I charge, $500 to do your annual taxes and $250 a month to close out your books, they are a contractor. Also, think about the type of relationship and what's the key aspect of the business. The reason they lost with the Uber drivers is the key aspect was driving people around. So if they drove you around, they were really employees versus a independent contractor who might be, a small business that picks up stuff for delivery from you. You're a florist, but you use a third party when you have a lot of deliveries to take the flowers to their destination. So you really have to be careful because the IRS, and the Department of Labor wants those FICA, which is the Social Security and Medicare parts, and FUTA, which is unemployment insurance. So you don't want to pay fines. And they do come after you. Resource requirements. What other resources does the business need? Do you need a website? Do you need printed materials as leave behinds? Do you need a physical office or business space? Or are you going to work out of your home, your den, or your basement? So think about what other resources you need. And for a lot of companies, you just need a simple website about where you're located, what time you're open, what services you're offering, more like a billboard than an interactive website. The other thing I wanted to talk about, this goes back to marketing, but it just jumped in my head. It's Google My Business. Everybody should do that. It's Google My Business, and that's where you can set up a free location of your business so that when you do look up a specific business, you pop up and they tell you the days you're open, the hours of operation, any special services, if you have a drive-up window. So that's very important, and that's a freebie, so you want to take advantage of that. External requirements is, do you need an accountant? Do you need a lawyer? Do you need a cleaning service for a business? A lot of companies, when they start and they have a small business, they clean their own toilets, they vacuum their own, carpet, they empty their own trash. But as they get bigger and they grow and they have more money coming in and more cash flow, they figure, you know what, we can hire out a service. So think about that. And these are other resources that you might have to consider. Do you need cloud computing? Do you need Microsoft Office? Do you need QuickBooks or a similar software? Do you need Grasshopper? Grasshopper.com is one of those services where they might call your office or your cell phone, but even if you're at home, it sort of keeps looking for you till they find you, and you just always answer the phone. Thank you for calling Rockin Enterprises. So, by the way, speaking of that, make sure your outgoing message on your office phone, if you still have a phone, or just your cell phone, and even your home phone if you work out of your home. Because guess what? Mom and grandma and the aunties, they all know it's your home. So when they hear thank you for calling Rockin Enterprises, they know it's the house phone. But they know I work out of the house, so they just leave a message like call your mother. So, make sure that you always sound professional and you don't have kids answer the phone on the outgoing recording from the house phone if the house phone is also a method where people reach you. Regis offices are like WeWork, but Regis office a lot of times gives you a more little office, like a door that you can walk into and shut. A lot of lawyers and accountants and insurance agents use Regis versus WeWork, which is more like 1871 and community offices where you just get a space at a table. Do you need iPads, smartphones, a web name that you get from GoDaddy or Namecheap? Vistaprint. Vistaprint is very affordable for business cards, business stationery, direct mail materials, brochures, signage, all sorts of things, checks, business checks. I bought some. Oh, and that's where I mentioned Google My Business, but you want to take advantage of that. That is a freebie. The other thing you might want to think about now, because of the pandemic, do you need to contract with somebody like Stripe? Stripe does digital payment software services so that you can accept Google and Apple Pay and PayPal. So, you have to think about times are changing and what you might need to do to stay relevant and keep serving your customers. Let's talk a minute there about pivoting, because so many companies, I don't know how many of you already have a small business and maybe you're struggling. Think about all the restaurants who were able to make boxes of food for delivery for the homemaker who was afraid to go to the grocery stores at the height of the pandemic here in Chicago, or companies that called a contractor and did a pickup window so people could do carry out. They had to reinvent themselves. One of the best ones is a story I read about in the Chicago Tribune of Nimlock. Nimlock is a local Chicagoland company that specialized in making displays for conventions. All sorts of materials that make up displays, lucite and the big ones that are at McCormick Place. And they did it for people all over America. So when the pandemic hit and nobody was doing big conferences, big trade shows, they realized that they could form the plexiglass, that they could cut the plexiglass. So they started to make protective shields for retailers who were eventually going to open, and all the doormen and all the big buildings who have those plexiglass little shields around them now. So they reinvented themselves so they could keep their workers and stay in business, and then go back to making displays when a vaccine is available and people start doing conventions again. So think about what other raw materials you have at your company or services that you can provide, that you can do a slight pivot and still be relevant and still have customers. Now is the time to be creative. People who were seamstresses started sewing masks. So think on those things. Operations management, who will be in charge of your business? And this is very important because a lot of times you will have a partner and you will be Mr. or Miss outside, and your partner will be Mr. or Miss inside, because they'll take care of the books, they'll take care of the billing, they'll take care of having seen that the insurance is paid and the accountant is paid and that your office is clean, but you go out and you're the rainmaker. So you have to think of who's going to be in charge. And what special qualifications or expertise do you have to run this business? And a lot of times a hobby is perfectly fine for starting a business. If you lost your job, but you were always making earrings for friends and family and stringing beads as jewelry, guess what? You can have a small business on Etsy and make handmade goods and sell them. So a lot of times a hobby, if you ran if you were a coach and you're retired, eventually you might be able to open up a baseball camp when people can have camps again. So a lot of times a hobby or a previous career can let you to a new career. When I switched and I started helping small business owners, it was by happenstance, because somebody asked me if I could do it, and I had already been in business many years. So I said, sure, I can help you, and an idea was born. So a lot of times your previous qualifications can make you prepared for a new career and a new business. And then when will you need to add employees? And also, do you know the law for hiring employees? Do you know about Title VII and equal opportunity? And another thing is never, never tell an employee you have a probationary period. You may think you have a probationary period in your head when you're interviewing them, that you'll give them 90 days to see if they're good or 30 days, but never mention it out loud because that can be construed as a contract with the employee. And if they're a loser, you want to cut your losses immediately. So do know, and you should have open-ended questions when you interview employees. Tell me about a time when you solved a problem. Tell me about a time when you helped someone. You know, tell me about a time when, or what was your favorite class? You know, you want to hear them talk so that they can speak, especially if it's a customer service job. You want to make sure they can think on their feet. So make sure you think on those things. Also, workman's comp insurance is required when you add your first employee. So if it's you and your spouse and you own the business, or you and your partner and you own the business, you do not need to have workman's comp. But as soon as you hire the first stranger, you do need to have workman's comp insurance. Oh, by the way, speaking of adding employees, you don't need it if it's your kids. And if you hire your kids to work in the business, wages are tax deductible and allowance is not tax deductible. And a lot of times your kids will be more savvy at creating a website or changing the website or working your Facebook page or doing your e-newsletter. So don't laugh at me when I say pay them a salary and not an allowance and put your kids to work. What salaries will you pay? And, you know, what can you afford? I know usually, and I don't know if Chicago has changed it, but Chicago has been upgrading the pay scale for even part-time employees that would go up in July 1, and we can ask Elisa if it changes again, because I know with the pandemic, I don't know if they postponed it, but I want to say it's maybe $13.50 already. So you have to pay what is legally required in your community, and if you're calling in from outside Chicago, check what your minimum wage is. What training will you need to do for your employees? You know, will you need special training yourself? When you open up a restaurant in Chicago, you have to take a health safety class in Chicago, and that has been around since probably the late 70s. I know my father had a small restaurant after World War II, and at some point Chicago you had to take a health and safety class for restaurant owners. It was a small sandwich shop, and so he took the class, and it was about keeping food safe and cooking safely and temperature safe. But one of the other things he had to learn was the Heimlich maneuver, and sure enough, one day he needed to perform it on a client, and it worked like a charm. And the client, it was an elderly gentleman, he coughed up what he was choking on. It was a piece of food that he hadn't chewed well. I don't know if he had his own teeth. And the man went and finished his dinner, and my father's knees were like Jell-O. And my father was a big man, but he was so shocked that he saved a life and that it worked so beautifully. And he had only practiced on dummies when he took the class, that it worked so well. So do you need special training? And a lot of times the training is just how to dispose of products. Like if you have a garage and you need to know how to dispose of motor oil, sometimes the training is that. The other thing is, will you do drug tests, check backgrounds, or bond employees? So you have to think about those things. And you typically should bond employees if they are going into somebody's home, if you have a carpet cleaning business, or, you know, drug tests if they're going to work with the public or handle equipment. And also, speaking of bonding employees and background checks, carpet cleaning is a great business because you get a lot of repeat users. When you clean somebody's carpet and you do a really good job, not only does that homemaker hire you back again, but all the friends and neighbors and relatives who see how beautiful the carpet looks after you cleaned it, guess what? They want to know which company she used. So think about your business and if you get a lot of word of mouth referrals. But you should probably do background checks and bond employees if you're sending people into somebody's home. Who will manage the daily business and the long-term finances? Who's going to manage cash flow? Who's going to manage sales? Who's going to tally up receipts? How will you process and record sales? A lot of companies use a very sophisticated point of sale register so that when you sell a large Coke versus a medium Coke, you just press a different button and it knows which one you sold, so that you can make sure that people aren't stealing from you, especially if it's a cash-based business. Now there's less of that with touchless pay because people don't have cash. I can't believe the things I'm charging for $4 and $5 that I would have always paid cash for because people don't have change these days. So who will manage the long-term finances, because you don't want to be cut short without having cash? And does the business have special local or federal regulations? One of the locals, one would be the minimum Chicago wage, and the other ones would be like how to get rid of motor oil or, broken light bulbs. CFLs you could drop them off at your neighborhood hardware store and they would get rid of them because they were supposed to be recycled. So you have to think about those special things. Some people are posting questions, but we'll go over those when we're done. Who will be in charge of inventory? And inventory, oh, by the way, let's go back 1 minute. Sales tax. This is a trick question that I usually ask, and I wait for answers, and somebody usually knows it. Do you know when to charge for sales tax in Illinois and when you don't? Think about that. When do you charge for sales tax in Illinois? Currently, it's when you sell a product and not on a service. So when you go to the dentist, you don't pay sales tax on what the dentist does to you, the tooth extraction or the cleaning. But when you go to the automotive repair shop, you do pay sales tax on the parts that are repaired or restored, the new parts that are put in your car, the oil filter, the brakes, the linings, whatever, but you don't pay on the hourly wage that the mechanic is charging you to do the work. So in Illinois, you only pay sales tax on products, not services, but they sort of want to change that. But for right now, you don't. So think on those things. That was a trick. Who will be in charge of inventory and inventory control? You want to make sure that you have a way of logging in inventory and that you balance it with what you sell so that neither customers nor employees are stealing from you. So that's important that you have measures in place. And a lot of people have those, special, if you have a retail store, those sort of magnetic doors you walk through because the things beep if you walk out of them. You have to get the close tags off. So think about those types of things because that system costs money. Sometimes it's just, it's a diner and nobody gets the food unless you put it in something. So you just want to make sure that your help isn't stealing the raw material. And do you have loss prevention policies in place? And you should. So think on those things. Now, choose the right type of entity and avoid some big mistakes. So the reason I say, also when you manage inventory, if you sell something that has an expiration date, you have to make sure that you manage getting rid of the things that are going to expire first. So think about first in, first out, not last in, first out. So it's first in, first out. So think on those things. Choosing the identity. The reason I say never be a proprietor, a sole proprietor, unless there is absolutely no chance you can get sued. And maybe for some, but I never really recommend it, or a simple partnership, is that if you do get sued, the person suing you can come after your personal assets. If you have a limited liability company or a C corporation. And a C corporation is a big giant corporation like an IBM or a Amazon or, Coca-Cola, or a sub-S corporation. And Illinois allows sub-S. The sub-S has a certain number of stockholders, and they're smaller companies, but you get the protection of being a C corp. They can only come after the assets of the business. So even if there's a bankruptcy and the business closes, if the business had $2,000 in the bank when it closed and it had a little equipment, you had a desktop and you had a desk and a chair, your creditors can come after those assets, but not your home, not your car, unless the car belonged to the company. So think about, talk to a lawyer before you make that decision. And I will say, when I was first starting out, when I first did corporate communications, I was a private corporation because my accountant said, what's the likelihood of you getting sued? I said, almost never, because all my clients approve the copy before we go to press and they sign off on it. And he said, and if they did make a mistake and you had to cover the thing, what would be a huge printing job? I said $10,000. That would be thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces, tens of thousands. He said, could you cover a $10,000 loss? I said, yes. He said, good, you're a sole proprietor, because it was easier to do. But once I started to get bigger, then I did switch to a subchapter S, because I was doing bigger and bigger jobs in companies, and it was just safer. Now, a partnership agreement, you want to have in place. So say you get into a partnership with your spouse, and you still have a partnership agreement, because sometimes a marriage goes south. If it's your best friend, your brother, your sister, I don't care, have a partnership agreement that says how you're going to sell the business if you decide one person wants to lead. And a lot of times this happens unexpectedly, because one of the partners will be killed in an accident, and you don't want to be in the business with your sister-in-law. So make sure you have a good partnership agreement. And also, if it's just two of you, that you have a clause in there that you will use a third-party independent arbitrator, because you want to know that if it's a 50-50 business and you can't decide, you pitch it to a third-party arbitrator, and he decides or she decides what's best for what's best for the business. Now, the buy-sell agreement I mentioned, it says predetermined how you can buy each other out. And like I said, a lot of times it's important just if there's a tragic accident. But sometimes, the pressure, the business is taking longer and longer to get started, and they want to just leave the business. They want to take a day job. So you need to know how to buy each other out in advance, and because it causes way less problems. What insurances do you need? We talked about general liability. That's just fire, theft, break-ins, workman's comp. Key employee is when you're a little bit bigger and you realize that somebody is your star salesperson. You might want to get key employee insurance on them, so if anything happens, you have money to hire a consultant and replace the person. Also, if a partner dies, a lot of times partners have key employee insurance on each other. And underestimating startup costs, this is a huge problem, so really think about it. And that takes us into our financial planning. And we do have a break-even analysis that is in Excel that if you follow and fill in the blanks, it will tell you break-even. Break-even is where total costs equal total expenses, and rather total costs equal total revenue. Total expenses equal total revenue. And you're not paying yourself that. You're not making a profit, but you're not bleeding cash. And then have you estimated your initial year of sales? Because you should. And then a monthly cash flow. So besides giving you a break-even analysis, I have sent BACP a monthly cash flow that's also in Excel, and all the math is in place. So when you get those two documents, the break-even and the monthly cash flow, save them as originals, and then do your version 1, your version 2, so that if you cut and paste a cell and you screw up the math in it, you can go back and look at what the cell formula was. And also in a monthly cash flow, you'd say, how do I estimate my sales? I don't know. It's a new business. Then start by estimating your expenses, because you will know what your rent will be, what your cell phone plan will be, what your internet costs are. So you'll have a lot of your insurance costs. You'll know what some of the expenses are, most of them. And then you can back in and see, can I sell that much product or service to get to break even? Because break even is the first thing you want, where total expenses equal total revenue. And does the business have special seasonality issues? And almost all do. Halloween, I don't know if you noticed, I was just in a Jewel, I guess, yesterday, and they said on the news, Halloween candy companies are usually, they wait to the day after Labor Day, and all the big stores switch from summer stuff to it's fall, and it's Halloween, the day after Labor Day. They are putting out Halloween candy now because they're afraid with the pandemic, people won't buy enough of it. So lots of things have seasonality. Even lawn care people, gardeners, landscapers, they have summer, winter, spring, fall. And then I say they have a fifth season, which is Christmas decorations, holiday decorations. You put them up and you take them down in January, which is a great addition to a landscaper, because sometimes it doesn't snow that much in December and January, even in Chicago. How much will it cost to open or expand your business? You need to know those costs and really make them big, because there's usually something that delays where you open late and you're paying rent, but you haven't opened your door. What are your personal financial monthly expenses? Make sure you know that, so you know you can keep a roof over your head and food in the refrigerator. Do you have a nest egg? You should. Don't, you know, it usually takes longer to get going than you anticipate. Do you have a working spouse? How much can you invest? Is there some financial support from other friends and family? But with friends and family, it's a good way to lose your friends and really make it the worst Thanksgiving ever. So, but don't overlook crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, some of those things if you need to raise money, especially if you're making a new product where you can give people a discount on it or send them a sample if you're going to try to raise money that way. You know, for a $15 donation, they get a bottle of your lotion. Do you have collateral for a traditional loan, a bank loan, or a small business loan? There were a lot of things. Take this down. CDFI. CDFI is a community development investment firm. They're in Chicagoland. Oxion is one. There's all sorts. There's many in Chicagoland, and you'll get a list of them because they're committed to making loans to small businesses, particularly the one in your neighborhood. Can you get financing terms from your vendors? Always ask for this. And it's where instead of paying, it's 210 net 30, you get a 2% net discount if you pay for the raw materials in 10 days, but the whole balance is due in 30. Ask for 45 days, 60 days, as long as you can get from the vendor. And a lot of vendors will give you extra terms when you are starting out. And so then you don't have to pay them back as quickly. It can take longer for you to get sales. And can you get a co-signer for a loan? Because for some people, you do need, businesses, you will need a co-signer for a loan. For an SBA loan or a lot of small loans, even from CDIFs, you need everybody who's in the business to sign the loan agreement, so you're all liable for it. Do you know your credit score? This is the real number and the real website for a free credit report. It is unscored, but you can see it. But now a lot of credit cards have free credit scoring. So think about, Discover has one, Chase has one, all sorts of credit cards have them, because you will need good credit. Even for a business loan, they want to see that you've paid your loans historically on your personal things. But this is really free. It's not the one in the dancing tights. You don't seem to see that one so much anymore. SMART goals are your goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-related. So when in your business plan, you should set goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and they have a time limit on it. Set goals for 1 year and 3 years, and it could be market share, sales, revenue, profitability, any of those things. How many customers, for restaurants, sometimes it's average price of a ticket and how many meals they're going to serve a day. And then this is how to get hold of me. So I know there was a lot of information, but I wanted to leave time for questions and answers. And so, Elisa, are you going to read some of the ones that have shown up in chat, or do you want me to?
Hey, Donna, thank you so much, as always, for the thorough explanation of business plan components. I'm going to go through the questions. First question is, should business consultants purchase liability insurance?
Yeah, there's, it's like, there's a special name for it. It's the type that lawyers buy. It's like so that you don't screw up. Yes, if you are consulting big clients, definitely. So it's a special type of, it's like a hold harmless, like if you make a mistake in a law firm, the insurance kicks in. So if you can be found that you were incompetent, so yes.
Okay, great. What type of legal entity is best for business consulting?
For consulting, you can probably be an LLC or a sub-chapter S corp, as long as you're just not a sole proprietor or a simple partnership.
Can you talk about deciding about exempt and non-exempt employees and how you determine if it's better to do hourly or salary for an employee?
Okay, so hourly is usually devoted, and they have rules about this, exempt, non-exempt, and if you Google Illinois Department of Labor exempt rules and non-exempt, they will tell you, but the general rule is how much control does the employee have? So you're exempt if you manage people, you're exempt if you can sort of come and go and set your hours and you don't work a 40-hour week, you're there all around the clock. And so, if you can have control over money and expenses, so it's usually how much control, and you're not exempt usually if you're just taking orders. And usually non-exempt people do get an hourly wage because they're also entitled to overtime if they work. And it's different in different states, so I don't know if we have anybody listening from Indiana or Wisconsin, but check your state department labor laws. But they get overtime and they get specific breaks, like a manager can work nonstop and barely run to the bathroom and they don't get breaks. But if you're an hourly or a non-exempt, you do have to get specific breaks, a break for your well-being and a break for lunch and meals. So I think you work 5 hours and you must get a lunch break. So there's very specific rules. And salaried people, exempt people are usually paid a salary because you want to get as much out of them as you possibly can.
Thank you. A couple questions coming in about business entity. One question is, how can I change my sole proprietorship to LLC? And then Donna, also if you can speak on any available organizations or resources when looking for what to decide on a legal entity.
Okay, so if you are super low income, you can get free advice from, and Elisa, correct me because they've changed their name a few times. Is it the Law Project? What exactly is their name now?
They changed their name. 1 second.
It's more complicated now.
I want to make sure it's the correct one.
And I can't remember.
1 second. So it's Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. And I'm going to type in their website in the chat box.
Okay, great. So anyhow, if you are low income and they give you a little questionnaire to fill out, they will help you for free. And the other person to work with to decide, should I be LLC, should I be sub-S, or talk to your accountant and your lawyer, because they will sort of explain how exposed you are and what you can lose. You know, so that's, and then how wealthy you are. Because if you're wealthy and you really have some assets, you do not want to be a sole proprietor or a simple partnership. But like I said, if there's very little risk, you get sued. You know, if you were having a grass mowing business and you were just going to cut grass and you weren't going to hurt or flower beds or whatever, you know, you might be okay. But talk to your lawyer and your accountant. And I hope that answers the question. Oh, and the other one, can you change? Yes, you can change. Talk to your accountant, and they will help you figure out the paperwork. You can change. You just can't change every year. If you change every year, it's a red flag to the IRS to say, audit me. But yes, you can change. It's not a problem. You know, so if you've been a sole proprietor and now your business is growing and you're 4 or 5 years, 3 years into business, and you say, oh my God, I should listen to Donna and I should be an LLC or a subchapter S, just talk to your accountant and they will help you change. It's a bunch of paperwork you file with the state.
Okay, this is a very specific question, but hopefully it could apply to many people. So I want to open up a laundromat in my community. It has been closed for a while, but I would like to own it and reopen it for the convenience of the people who live in the community. How can I start the process of reopening an abandoned laundromat in my community? And I think, Donna, we can talk about a little bit how it doesn't have to be a laundromat. It could be other businesses in a community as well.
Find out, and I don't know if if you can do it online or if you have to go to City Hall. Find out who owns the property. Like it might say in the window for lease or sale, contact real estate agent, Tom Jones. And then you contact them and you say you want to reopen it. So, and if you can't really figure it out, if you call a real estate agent in any of the buildings that's in the same neighborhood, they can find out who owns the building and, handle the first steps for you. So yeah, because they'll make a commission off it. So find out who owns the building and if they'll sell it as is and if it has the assets or, how long it's been closed. Maybe there's no assets, but at least there's the connections to the washers and the dryers. And that's any business. But beware, especially for restaurants. Wait, let me add one thing. If you open up a restaurant that's opened and closed a million times, think about why you would open it, because maybe it's not a good neighborhood or it's hard to turn into where there's no parking and that's why it fails. So with the restaurant, be very, very leery if it's been a half a dozen restaurants and they've all failed.
Great, thank you. Let's see, what else do we have? This question is, how do I know what's the correct tax percentage to charge for baked goods and non-alcoholic beverages? I will answer that is actually imposed by the state and the city. So you don't necessarily need to worry about that's already decided for you. So I do just recommend going to the Illinois state website and you can get some information about the different taxes for specific goods, beverages, alcohol tax, but that's going to be built into your business. Donna, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, because that's really why, and they can always ask their older person or whatever, but also like sometimes say they're in Evanston, but they're listening to us today. Evanston might have different taxes than Chicago and certain neighborhoods in Chicago, because I live in the tourist district, so I get to pay an extra % for anything I buy in this neighborhood. So you might, start there and just Google it. Google like the tax, sales tax and put in your zip code and you'll probably get the right answer. But somebody there was a question about arbitrator. There are professional arbitrators. So just Google Chicago area arbitrators, and there's probably a National Association of Arbitrators, and then look for recommendations and check references.
Several questions are coming in about licensing needs, specific business licenses. So the City of Chicago, we are still processing business licenses, and depending on what type of license you obviously need, you could find information by going to our website, which is chicago.gov. /BACP, and you will see we have a division that handles all licensing for the city of Chicago, and you can research which license applies to you. If you're uncertain, we do have an option for you to still contact us, and a small business center consultant can walk you through the licensing process.
Also, Lisa, I see one about alderpersons. They don't approve a business, but that's a good place to start, because you might have a business that's legal, but it's legal with certain restrictions, like about the sales of alcohol. You can't be near a school, you can't be near this and that. So they might be able to tell you things about streets or places that you can't be or you could be. Also, alder people can approve signage. So if you want a sign that won't meet the neighborhood, better you know it before you buy the sign than after the sign. The other thing about two-page business plan, signal page, I believe a business plan is as long as you need to answer the questions that we went over. And there is a template that Elisa will post where if you answer all the questions, you wind up with a business plan. And it can be 4 pages, 5 pages, 6 pages, but it should answer all the questions. And the executive summary is the one where it's the single page or 2 pages. And honestly, that's what most bankers read and most investors read. And the ones where they're 50 and 90 and pages long, that's for people who are going to raise hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. So, unless you're doing that kind of business where you really have to have huge market studies and whatever, probably not.
And that's correct. And I'm just going to touch a little bit on that. That goes into zoning. That what Donna said, that certain areas within the city are zoned for specific businesses, specific commercial businesses for homes. So once again, our department does have zoning coordinators. It's also actually available online. If you go online to our website, there's a zoning tool where you can type in the address of a property you're considering, and it'll say what it's exactly zoned for. And if you need some additional assistance, you can obviously reach out to our office as well.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of things, the rules for like home-based is, does anybody come to the house, or do you always go there? Like I said, if you're an accountant, but you always go to the client and you just use the software in your den, So it's really, there are simple rules that you can check, but that is a different lecture. But it's usually like they don't want people coming in, parking, making noise. So those are some of the rules.
Not sure if you could ask or answer this one, but do you need a separate phone for businesses for tax purposes?
That's one for the accountant. I would say probably not, as long as you always answer, thank you for calling Easy Cleaners, or thank you for calling Tony's Pizzeria, whether it's also your cell phone or not, because they're not going to look you through every line. But I would say, yes, I am not an accountant. I am not an attorney. But, as long as you, because I never took off the phone, but, but friends would call me on my business phone. So, yeah.
And you're speaking pretty heavily on accountant and attorneys. Many people say, the dream team is your insurance agent, your accountant, and your attorney when starting a business. So definitely do some research. Yeah.
Absolutely, because your insurance agent will really, if he's a good insurance or she's a good insurance, will give you the bare minimum you need to legally open up the door. Mm-hmm. And then they will grow with you as your business grows. They won't sell you a ton of stuff that you don't need key employee when you don't have any customers, because your key employees have no worth. But, and they'll also know if you need that special liability, and that lawyers use, and if you get sued for malpractice. Lawyers, architects, people like that need a special type of insurance.
Question came in, if you could talk about advantages of selling to a wholesale versus a retailer.
Oh, yes. If you can sell to a wholesaler, they take a huge part of the distribution headache out of the problem. If you sell directly to retailers, you have to figure out how to load them up with goods and products all the time. So it's much easier if you can sell to, and usually with food companies, health, big box stores, you do sell to them. Like, when you sell to Walgreens, because the way to think about it, when you sell to Walgreens, do you ever notice how if you go into a Walgreens or a CVS, they have those boxed bins where they'll have 3 pairs of pantyhose, 2 bottles of deodorant, 1 bottle of shampoo, 2 packages of razor blades? It's because the stores can order the quantities. They don't have to take a minimum purchase, because if you're the manufacturer and you make an overpack that has 24 pieces, a lot of stores can't use 24 pieces. They just want to refill their shelves. And so it is, and there are special distributors that go to, Fortune Fish is one for food. Like if you make a gourmet food product and you want it distributed to Whole Foods or some of those other places, you sell to one grocery distributor, one health and beauty aid distributor. So it's much easier if you sell wholesale.
And just a quick comment that Donna has referenced several handouts. We will be emailing those out from our BACP outreach email to all attendees on this webinar. So when you registered, you provided your email address, and we will send all handouts to those email addresses.
And I see one about zoning for a food truck. That is a very special, type of business. And so you really have to check, because they have rules in Chicago where you can't be too near other real restaurants or whatever. And food truck is not an easy gig. So make sure you know what the rules are before you do it.
And with that, we do actually have a food truck map that is available on our website. So you can look at it if you just go to chicago.gov/BACP. I believe it's under licensing, but we do have a food truck map that shows exactly what Donna said, specific areas, and now it's from 2 to 4 hours. So, but a lot does play into the food truck industry. So read up and reach out to our small business center consultants for that.
How should you choose an attorney? Sometimes you need more than one attorney. I see if you're opening up a business, sometimes you just need a general practice, but otherwise sometimes you do need real estate attorneys. Don't sign a big lease unless you have a competent real estate attorney review it, because a lot of times, this is a good point. Actually, a lot of times beginners don't understand that when you rent commercial space, you get it sort of as is. If there's carpeting, you got carpeting. If there's light fixtures, they leave the light fixtures. But they don't do any build out unless it's negotiated in the lease. And this is a very good trick. It is better to pay the owner of the building, more money to do the build out and have him charge you higher rent, because rent is fully deductible on your income taxes. If you pay separate contractors to do the build out, you amortize that build out. So say the build out costs you $100,000. You amortize that. That means you divide it and you take it off as an expense over 27 and a half years. So every year for the next 27 and a half years, you take off 1/27th of the expense because it's depreciated. It's amortized. So, it'll take you forever to get your $100,000, and say you move in 10 years because your business is so successful that you need a bigger space. You leave lots of money on the table. If you paid higher rent, it was fully deductible. And a lot of times the landlords have a host of contractors where they can do the build out quicker, cheaper, and easier than you can.
Another question is, if looking for a startup loan and location is important, Is it better to secure finances or location first?
Oh, that's a great question. Look at the location and secure it. Don't pay for the location. Don't sign a lease. You can ask your lawyer about a letter of intent. And a letter of intent is like, ooh, I'm really interested in renting this spot, but first let me see if I can get a loan and raise the money. So they sort of hold it for you for a while, and then you find the money. Don't sign a lease before you have the money, but find the space first if location is important.
Could you speak about building websites again?
Yes, there are a lot of tools online where they will help you build a simple website. And, you know, if you're talented, you might be able to do that. If not, you can usually hire somebody to do it. And if you have a limited budget, I would say try posting on a college bulletin board like Columbia College or the College of the Art Institute, where you might be able to get a student to do it. They might even get a grade off it, but they might charge you a very affordable fee. If you need a really complex one with lots of pages and a secure, shopping cart, et cetera, you might have to hire real professionals. And then, they usually charge you by how many items, how many pages, how searchable. So it can get very costly if you can't code. But some that are just billboards, your kid might be able to just do one for you so that they can find you on the internet and they know where you're open and what you got and they see a menu, all the place in order.
A few more questions coming in about liability and insurance coverage. Once again, the best option is reaching out to an insurance agent just to get the most accurate information, especially what kind of coverage you need. We do have a webinar posted on our YouTube page about business insurance, and I will type in the web page for our YouTube channel in the chat. We do post our webinars there, so you could reference some information.
Also, I see one about acquiring an existing business. You get your accountant first because you want to really look at the books closely. Is the business worth what I'm paying for? The other trick is you can see if you are buying a business, see if you can buy it with some money down and then pay it out over a few years, because then the business is usually worth buying because he knows he'll get it or she knows she'll get her money. And this way you don't have to tie up all your cash in the purchase. So if you're buying an existing business, accountant first, and then try to negotiate the best deal. Where when my father sold his little restaurant, he took some money down, and then I think he had 24 or 36 payments of some amount for the next owner. It's still a little restaurant. It's a slightly different style, but it's still a little restaurant in Rogers Park where we grew up. And because he knew the guy would make enough money to be able to pay him, and he was ready to retire. So that's a good trick.
All right, well, that wraps up today's webinar. Once again, we will be emailing our Donna's handouts to all attendees, hopefully by the end of today. So just be on the lookout for an email from BACP Outreach, where we'll have all the handouts regarding how to write a business plan. So thank you again, Donna, for spending your morning with us. Any last words?
No, just that always write your own business plan too. Don't let somebody else write it for you, because then you won't know your business well enough when you get grilled by a loan officer. And as far as finding, there's lots. Axion is a big lender in the community, but just Google Chicago CDFI and you will get lots of people who are specific lenders. There's a Chicago Community Loan Fund that lend to small businesses, and that is their mission. So they're much easier. Stay away from the big banks because it's very hard to get a loan. They want to do loans at $250,000, $500,000. And if you need $50,000 to open up your business, you really need an SBA loan, and you can even go online. but big banks really don't want to take their time to waste with you. So really look for a CDFI who is a community lender, and they can help you. Savings and loans are good too. Credit unions are typically good lenders for small businesses. So stay, as much as we love the big banks because they're convenient, stay away from them unless you need $250,000 or $500,000 or more.
Great.
With that, I say goodbye, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Have a good Friday and a good weekend. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.